Okay, we are at week number 10 of Introduction to Corrections, and as I had said to you before, that before you knew it, we would be at week 10, and so we're here, and this is the last lecture of the quarter. Next week, the quarter ends, so let's take a few minutes and go over some of the things that you're expected to be doing this week, and then I'll kind of comment about some of the things for next week as well. Okay, and remind you again, my instructor information there is always the first thing that you see at the course homepage. I hope you always look at the course homepage because it always has the announcement, but also there are reminders in here that are very important reminders that you're required to conduct research for all papers, and that means the sole source of your papers cannot be text, or you'll lose 2 points. And then also, all important here, many of you don't read this portion or follow it up based on the rubric, is that all written assignments should be in APA format, which means citations in the body and references at the end, not one or the other, but both. And that, if you have references, they should also be reflected as citations throughout the body of the paper, not just once in the paper. And then finally, this is our reminder of lecture. Today is our last lecture. And so let's go and see what our announcements are for this week. Juvenile offenders, you've been writing about them this week. Section 13 of the text and the activity what the juvenile justice system is all about, historical perspective, major cases, and juvenile corrections vocabulary. We're going to go over that in a few minutes. Your discussion posts that were due yesterday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard with the role of the juvenile probation officer. Then your reply post, of course, is due this Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then you know the rules on that. And then finally, your written assignment, your state's waiver process. And then be sure you complete the quiz. And that all assignments are due by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then there's my motto here. And then let's take a quick look at the calendar, which, as I always remind you, that's the place where you can also see a full picture of what to expect. This is where we are this week, and then the assignments, and then remember, next week, your initial post is due on Tuesday as normal. However, your reply post is going to be due by the 17th. Your written assignment is going to be due by the 17th, and then you'll have a final exam. Final exam will be similar to the midterm exam. And then you're going to, the quarter is going to end at 11:59 p.m. On the 17th, on St. Patrick's Day. So you have to get all your assignments in by that time. Now, there are no exceptions. And so, anyway, you're familiar with the final exam, but I'll kind of mention a little bit about it in just a few minutes. Okay? So let's take a look at the assignments for this week. Your state's waiver process. Notice it's a 2-page paper. It's not 1.5. It's not 1 3/4. To explain the options available in your state and the process used to accomplish waiver to adult court. Include any statutory exclusions in your state that mandate automatic transfer to adult court as well. And again, make sure you have your citations and references in those papers. I've given you at the beginning of the quarter a full, complete list of what's expected for each written assignment. Then finally your discussion post, and then your quiz. 10 minutes for 10 questions. So you want to make sure that you do those, all right? And then, just so you'll know, let's go to week 11. Just take a glance at it, your assignment. This is your written assignment. Notice that this week the last week you'll have a 1 to 2 page paper explaining how the technology tools are applied. Remember, citations and references. And then finally, make sure that your transferable skills project is done, and you'll need to make sure that you have that done. Okay, and then it tells you how to submit it. Now, I will say this to you, that don't worry about optimal. You're going to submit it under your drop-down box. Drop-down box, not the not optimal. You don't have to worry about that. Just do it in the regular drop-down box, and that's how your assignments are going to be submitted. And then your discussion, and then your final exam. Your final exam, 40 multiple choice and true-false questions. The time exam is for 40 minutes. And once again, you know how that went because it's the same way as the midterm, okay? All right. So, again, you're going to submit your course transferable skills assignment. To complete this assignment, you'll need to follow these instructions, okay? Now, for the transferable skills project collection, it's really not graded. It's more of an assessment. But you want to make sure that you follow what the video says. Okay. Any questions? Feel free to reach out to me. You'll see that when it comes to when you see, you'll notice that if you go to the course home to get started, and you go back and you look at this, I want to point something out to you. And you get to week 11. Your final exam, then your written discussion. Now, just remember what I told you. I said that in that final exam, it's very, very, very important that you complete that. Okay. All right. So now let's get back to week 10. And let's look at the lesson content. So we're dealing with juveniles this week, and you already know what the assignments are. Now, in terms of dealing with the juvenile justice system, you should be aware of the fact that juveniles are not really considered as criminals. They're really not supposed to be considered as criminals. notice the points that it says they're taken into custody, but they're not arrested. They're detained, but not jailed. They're adjudicated, but not found guilty, and given a disposition, not a sentence. And so as a result, what we tried to do is give the juveniles a chance to rehabilitate themselves. And oftentimes we try to extend probation if possible. And it tells you what the probation officer's role is here, as you've already been discussing this week in your discussion post. And juveniles report to the probation officer, similar to adults. However, probation officers work closer with the family. So what they're trying to do is they're almost like social workers, as I said in one of my discussion posts. It's very important that they help the juvenile to receive services that will help them receive some education. If there's a drug problem or alcohol problem, to help them to get treatment for those problems so that they can get the kind of help. And usually these programs are non-residential, where they stay at home, but they still are responsible as a condition of their probation to have these issues taken care of by going to where they're supposed to go. When juveniles commit violent or heinous crimes, they then can be waived into adult court, and various states change. That's why you're writing a paper about your state's waiver. But the end result, it says, is serious in that adult sanctions include prison now apply, and the issues of youth and adult prison are really, really tough, because you take these young kids and you put them already in an overcrowded situation, exposed to much more violence, and they can be exploited by the adult offenders. And so some states have began to work to try to help change that, try to give house arrest or to put a person on electronic monitoring in those kinds of situations. Just remember that the key thing in juvenile justice system is to not label the person as a criminal, but to remember that they are minors and that they really are trying to help them and prevent them from becoming adult offenders. And all of the resources that are available are used. You should be aware of the fact that the problem, though, has been lack of financial resources to provide programs that will adequately address the issues that are necessary to help the juveniles. So, notice some of the major cases. One of them is the Kent case, and I remember that case very well. That said that transferring, that there are due process requirements that are necessary before transferring a juvenile to an adult facility. And then we come to In re Winship. I remember this one in the 1970s. Says that in delinquency matters, state must prove its case beyond doubt. So the standard is the same as in adult court. And then in another landmark case, before we get there, in re Galt. I remember this one that involves the rights that are involved in juvenile court. Juveniles have, as it says, 4 basic constitutional rights. These are the same ones adults have: right to timely notification of the charges, the right to confront witnesses, the right against self-incrimination, so they don't have to testify against themselves, and they also have a right to counsel as well. So you begin to see that the courts and look at it as it progressed on. So let's go now to 71. Move this. Should move. Okay, let's try it here. I don't know why. Let's try this one. See if it works better here. Okay. Sometimes these things don't work well. Okay, let's go back to this. I don't know why it's not working. It worked the other day when I was looking at it. Let me try it again with this. Okay, let's try it now again. Okay, there we go. Okay, Galt. Okay, so then in 1971, we had McKeever versus Pennsylvania. Jury trials are not constitutionally required. So there's no right to a jury trial. That's one of the differences that you have in juvenile court that you don't have in adult court there. Then, in 1975, in the Jones case, waiver of a juvenile to criminal court following adjudication constitutes double jeopardy. So let's say if there is an adjudication in juvenile court, you can't do the waiver. You can't do it. It's going to either be done before the trial, or either it's going to end up being double jeopardy, which means the person can't be tried as a juvenile then as an adult. In 79, in the Smith versus Daily Mail Publishing, it says the press may report juvenile court proceedings in certain circumstances. However, they have to be very careful because we want to be very protective of juveniles. Notice the situation here is that we want to make sure that we protect the privacy because the courtrooms are closed. Aiding versus Oklahoma, defendant's youthful age should be considered a mitigating factor in determining whether to apply the death penalty. Well, of course, that's been resolved because what has happened is that in the Simons case, it was determined that we don't execute juveniles. And so many states before that did not execute juveniles, and some did. But the Supreme Court finally said no more execution of juveniles, and that was resolved later. In Shaw versus Martin, preventive pretrial detention of juveniles is allowed under certain circumstances, and that means that they can be held in juvenile homes or the Audi homes, or in some instances the adult facilities, but we hope that's not the case. The point of that is that they can be held and not necessarily released to their parents or whomever. In Thompson versus Oklahoma, the minimum age for death penalty was set at 16. But again, I already told you how that later on changed. This is the case that changed it all. Roper versus Simons, in 2005, and where we are now, the minimum age for death penalty is 18. So we do not, and you're an adult at 18. So the point I was saying is that it evolved from the point that we don't want to execute juveniles, and that's the whole point of that. Okay. Let's go back to this. Now, let's look at some of the terminology that is involved. Parens patriae. And so this is what it is, what it means, the term. It's Latin. And what it describes where the right to intervene in the lives on children by their kings, or the government stepping in and become guardians of the youth. And so that's what that's all about. So what it amounted to is the whole juvenile court system involves parens patriae, and it makes sure that that young people who are in the juvenile court system are the state is looking out for their best interests. Again, that's one of the reasons why the terminology is different. Instead of prosecuting, we're trying to help them. Then a delinquent, juvenile delinquent. So we flip that over. It is minors who violate criminal law or who are incorrigible, truant, or runaway. Notice that's what they are. They're delinquent. They're delinquent. And then their cases are adjudicated. Status offender is one who engages in behavior that is illegal because of their age. So a person that is involved with a crime and like statutory rape or something along those lines, that would fit in the status category. But it then depends on the type of crime that the individuals commit. In some jurisdictions, if a kid is 12, they can't be charged with murder and those kinds of things. Community treatment. Community treatment is the effort to provide, as it says, care, protection services for juveniles, such as what we talked about earlier, probation, some form of counseling, restitution. Notice the direction that we go in. We don't want to try to be punitive. We want to be rehabilitative with the juvenile. Institutional treatment. Facilities operated by state or county to restrict movement of residents through staff monitoring, locked exit, and interior fence control. We try to keep them segregated as possible from the adult group because we are trying to protect the juveniles as well as not expose them to the chance of becoming more hardened criminals. Residential programs, speaks without saying here, provide social services for the juvenile. Many are placed in group homes and some kind of program, boot camps, to try to get them straightened out. There are some programs like there's a program called Scared Straight that attempts to scare the student or the juvenile into understanding the direction that they're heading in as an adult for crime. The key then is to not, again, be punitive, but to teach them a lesson and to point them in a new direction in their lives. That's the whole essence. Non-residential programs are for offenders that are not confined overnight, and these are really kids who end up either at home, and like I said again, you'll have electronic monitors and all kinds of things that are on them. Aftercare. It's like parole. So after you have finished some part of your sentence, then you are released to your parent or whomever, your guardian, and then you're still considered as being monitored, like in the parole system, as a juvenile. Then we're just about done. Judicial waivers, we already know about that, where the intake personnel, prosecutors, or judges make a decision whether or not to try a juvenile as an adult. Social investigation reports. This is really what we do with, kind of like what we do with pre-sentence investigations, where, that's why I say PSI, pre-sentence investigations, where we look at the background of that youth to see how many contacts they've had with the system, if any, to help in terms of adjudicating their case. Statutorial exclusion involves laws in some states that automatically transfer juvenile offenders to adult courts for certain offenses. Not all have them. You can be sure that the direction points that the more serious the offense, the more likely that one could end up heading in that direction. And then that's the end of that, okay? And so those are the things that we'll be dealing with here, okay? Let's go back to the classroom. And so I'm going to be adjourning. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You know how to reach out to me, and I'll be glad to provide you with any information concerning week 11 and clarification on week 10 assignments. Of course, you already know your course project was due this week, last week, which was week 9, and I am in the process of grading those this week. All grades are entered except up to grade week 9, which I'm working on right now. So I'm going to say good night, and again, I hope that you learned a lot in this class. Some of you did pretty well. Most of you did pretty well. Some of you, the problem that you had relate to the citations and references, the APA format, and then Grammarly. Grammarly is so important. It is a rule of the college that we use Grammarly to have you to be pointed in the direction of providing more critical skills in terms of your papers. We want to see what's going on in your thought process, and we want to make sure that you follow that. And you notice at the very beginning of the course, I spent time in open house talking about that. And then almost every week, I talked about your critical skills as opposed to your ability not just to research and write, but also I want to see you analyze. I want to see what you think about these things. So that's about it. So I am wishing you the best, and I will be teaching this course again next quarter. So if some of you didn't make the cut, you'll probably see me again, but you'll understand the processes that I operate under. So I'm going to say good night.